Hey guys, it's Chris Bate with Cheat the Game coming back at you, and today we're going to continue on with our Lua series. And Tim the Enchanter is his YouTube channel. He also goes by They Call Me Tim13 at opencheattables.org. He's also the founder and creator of opencheattables.org, so please go over there. And beginners are welcome, and we want you to come post all your cheat tables. They're right now giving away free games for you to make cheat tables for. It doesn't matter if you are a beginner or seasoned pro, all are welcome. If you only know how to get infinite ammo and health, that's fine. Please come grab you a game and put your cheat tables up there, because we welcome you, alright? But anyway, I just want to introduce this lesson coming out, and I'm going to have to introduce this as more of an intermediate style lesson, because I'm going to tell you right now, Tim is so advanced. I mean, he is just leagues above my understanding right now. So, I will warn you ahead of time that you will need to know Cracker's lessons, the Xtreme Beginner series. You probably going to need to go back through them before these lessons are going to make any sense to you, okay? So keep that in mind, and you probably might need to watch it a couple of times, but I want to show you an advanced programmer. He knows Lua like the back of his hands. He is an advanced coder and advanced programmer, and this is what we're building up to, and he gives some great information. Now, if you are already familiar with Lua, coding and things, this is your channel right here. Come to Tim the Enchanter, because he has something, a little something for everybody, but I'm telling you, he can take you from intermediate status to advanced quick, because he knows this stuff, and he's happy to help you any way you can and everything. Today's lesson is going to be dealing with tables in Lua. And I'm going to leave this up in the, or down in the description here. And basically it says here, let's take a look. Tables are the main, in fact the only data structuring mechanism in Lua, and a powerful one. We use tables to represent ordinary arrays, symbol tables, sets, records, queues, and other data structures in a simple, uniform, and efficient way. And it says Lua also uses tables to represent packages as well. But Tim's going to give you an example of how to use a table. Okay? So keep that in mind, that he is very advanced. He knows his stuff backwards and forwards. And he gives some very, very good information here. But like I say, I do recommend, if you're an extreme beginner, which I am also, okay? I'm an extreme beginner, that, go back through Cracker's lessons and make sure that you understand what's going on in each lesson before you progress over to the intermediate, because I don't want you getting lost. And please also know that we do have another user that's volunteered to continue on the Xtreme Beginner series. I just need to get that together right now, but those are coming in the very near future. But I want to still get you some content out, and I want to show you some great things Lua can do for you. And Tim is one of the best at it, and I'm so happy that he's made some lessons for Cheat the Game. These are CTG exclusives right here. You'll only see them here, and we really appreciate it. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Tim up. Hey guys, it's Chris Bate. I want to take a minute to thank Guided Hacking for sponsoring our channel. I'm sure most of you already know who they are, but GH truly is the best place to learn game hacking. Every question you could possibly ask has already been answered there at least a dozen times. When Ray bought the site several years ago, he read through every post and then designed a game hacking course which answers every one of these questions. His goal was to make game hacking as easy as possible, without the need to constantly ask questions, and I think he's achieved that pretty well. The people that make tutorials there are very knowledgeable. It doesn't matter if you're a total beginner or a seasoned pro, they have tutorials for you. Guided Hacking has something to offer everyone. Games today are constantly evolving, so we have to learn to evolve with them. Whether you're interested in Android, Unity, Unreal Engine, or kernel drivers, they have tutorials on every topic. You can find my tutorials there, as well as many other great game hacking instructors. All the closely guarded secrets most game hackers like keeping to themselves are available to you. Guided Hacking pulls the curtain back and opens the vault to let you in on all the treasures game hacking offers. Some of you may be hesitant because Guided Hacking is now a paid service, but you have to understand that GH is a massive educational resource, not a regular game hacking forum. If they took the Game Hacking Bible and put it on Udemy, they could easily charge $100 for it. Just a small donation of $5, you'll get access to all these tutorials, and that is nothing in the grand scheme of things. If you're serious about learning game hacking, believe me, it is a great investment. Rick and I met 5 years ago, and we've always done our best to support each other, so please check them out if you haven't already. I promise you won't regret it. Also, when you get there, make sure to tell them that Chris Fate from Cheat the Game said hello.
Hello everyone, Tim the Enchanter here. I had just watched Cracker's latest video, or Cheat the Game's latest video, where Cracker explained types. He went more into the functions, tables, and I believe numbers was more what he did. But when you got into tables, I noticed he made a couple of things. I wouldn't necessarily call them mistakes, just the same kind of stuff I probably would have said early on. You know, you're still learning and all of that. And I only know the difference because I've messed with Lua for quite a bit longer. So I kind of noticed it and thought some things should be pointed out just to help keep things a little more clear. So one thing was, he told you, he was talking about multi-dimensional tables, but he never actually made a multi-dimensional table. That, and also talking about pairs and I-pairs. So when you start talking about the iterator functions, pairs and I-pairs, within Lua they're called stateless iterators. And they actually use special functions within inside stuff. And it's, you know, you would have the next function, literally just next, and you can give it a table and it will kind of iterate over it. We're not going to worry about that just yet. But the big difference between I-pairs and pairs is I-pairs requires you know, an array type table. So if we were actually to create a pretty simple table here, and much like he showed, if you just got, you know, more or less a list is how I would generally actually describe this, but it could also be described as array. And we can even show, because I noticed he mentioned concatenate, and it is one that technically can slow things down. But even I've tested it, and it's, I mean, you really got to have a lot of concatenations to see a difference. Otherwise, you're talking, you know, milliseconds. So not something that you would ever really notice unless you're really timing things out and testing stuff to see what's faster, unless you've got hundreds of iterations. But I can even show you a way around that here in a minute. But at any rate, so if we've got this table, and we try to iterate over it with I-pairs, it will work fine. Pairs, TBL, do print I comma V, and that's even something, because, you know, there's 100 different coding styles in Lua, and all of them are, there's nothing wrong with it. Some people like to use the semicolons at the end. I don't care for it because it's not needed, unless you're trying to do things on single lines, because you can do that. But at any rate, so we can run this real quick, and we can see that we do get our data back. But one thing we can do is we can set different indexes. We don't have to start at 1. We can actually start at 10 here. And this will still be a numerical index, but it will be set up to where it starts at 10. Now, of course, you actually have to name each one in this way if you want it to count like this. Otherwise, it will start back at 1. And I can't say I've honestly tested. I don't know if it will start overwriting stuff or not later on down the line if you just try to make a more simplistic list. But if we try and print that, we see we're not getting anything back. And that's kind of where I-pairs and pairs comes into different. I-pairs really does require it to start at 1 and you can't skip spaces, otherwise it will hit something that's nil and it will just stop, because one isn't, essentially one, index of one is nil. It just automatically stops I pairs. So to get around that, you've got to use pairs, and that way we can in fact get everything back. Oh, I did that wrong. It can be 14, not 11 again. But this way you can get everything back. And then the thing with I pairs as well is not only can we still list it just like we did with or pairs will not only list it the same as I pairs, but we can't even have name indexes. So, if we have name equals some name, and I don't know, data equals, and even in this case we could actually, this could be a table, and that's what would make it a multi-dimensional table. Now here when it tries to print it, it will just wind up printing a blank because it's not set up to print tables. Print doesn't print tables naturally. But we can just go ahead and say data for something, and then this will still print all of that because it doesn't care. Whereas if we actually went back to I pairs, it will only print the index based stuff. So that is one thing to keep in mind with the difference between pairs and I pairs. And then if we did have a multi-dimensional table, to actually iterate through that stuff, you do have to either index it, to the table directly, or have a second iterator within there to check if you've got a table and that kind of thing. Because here now, if we run this, you'll see that we just get a blank for data, because it doesn't really print tables quite right. Whereas if we do type, we can get what type that data is, and then thus we could have a check to see if it's a table and then iterate through that table as well, and all that. That just kind of depends what you're trying to do. So that was just one thing I kind of wanted to touch on just a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, if you are worried about concatenation, one thing you can do, now it really only works with lists like this, but one thing you can actually do is do print, and then the table class, so to speak, has a concatenate function. And that we can feed it a table and then whatever separator we want. This is actually one I kind of tend to use when coming up with file names, because that way I don't have to, or file locations. That way I can kind of have all the folder structures separated and then just concatenate it together with a single separator. But this way it can concatenate a single string, with spaces separating it. And we could even see how this can change. If we just make that an empty string, it will concatenate it all together with nothing in between. And that technically is the way that if we had hundreds of stuff, this would actually be tiny bit faster, because each time you concatenate a string, normally it actually creates and destroys a new string every time. So it would, if we were doing this more manually, we might concatenate some with data, and that would create a new string with some data. And then when we concatenated that string with the next part of the string, it would then add those together, or concatenate them, and then destroy the old string, and just keep going down that line. And it does with a really long list of stuff. It can slow things down a bit. Something like this, I guarantee if we time this down to a millisecond, we wouldn't even see a difference. We would see more of a difference with just random stuff, because different processes are doing different things on my computer, and that would change the timing more than the actual way we're doing this would. So to actually get into multi-dimensional tables, just in case we don't know what that is, so we can actually create a table within a table. And that's more what a multi-dimensional table is. So if we had a secondary list of, data that we had in a, second table here, this is what would be our multi-dimensional table. Generally, for me, if I use that kind of stuff, it would be a table of tables. I wouldn't necessarily mix like this. Not unless it was a named thing, and then that way I could get direct access to it. But technically Lua doesn't care. You could absolutely do it this way and it won't mind at all. Unless you start trying to use every element as a string. This is where if you're mixing it in this way, you would have to, in your loop, check to see if it's a string or a table, and then determine what you're going to do based on that, which isn't super difficult. He kind of showed the way you could do that. You could iterate through one portion of a table. Well, let's go ahead and do it. And I did want to point out, so in some cases, say we don't need that index. The normal convention within Lua, and even some languages that can allow you to do that kind of thing, the convention is to use an underscore. So that way when you're reading it or someone else is reading it, you can know right away that index isn't going to be used in this loop. We don't need that index at all. Big old sausage fingers messing me up today. I'm trying to think 2 steps ahead. Anyway, so what we can do is we can go ahead and say if type is equal to, or type v is equal to string, then we just want to print v out. Now we can also say if type v is equal to table, we want to iterate on that table as well. So the way we can do that is we can stick another for loop in here. Now this is where you will have to name things slightly differently. But again, because we're not necessarily wanting to use the index, we can just go back with an underscore and it won't mess anything up. If we went with v, it would actually kind of mess up our loop here, because we would be trying to iterate over whatever gets set by this for loop. So we don't want to do that, but we can say like v2, so that way we can easily tell. But this time we want to actually iterate over v, because we now know that that is a table. And then here we can go ahead and do, and these are special characters. I'm pretty sure Cracker Jack went over that on one of the last videos I saw of his. If not, they're just special characters, so that way you can add like carriage return, new line. In this case, we're going to be adding a tab. We'll just say v2, and I believe that's all we need. And then as you can see there, we iterate through that first set of strings, but then when we get to that secondary part, that table, we've got our what makes it a multi-dimensional table. We can iterate over that stuff as well. And just how complex you get with that stuff is, however far you're willing to go with it. But, so yeah, that was kind of all I was really wanting to add, just to make sure we make that distinction. But again, pairs is just less discriminate. So it'll still print out much the same, but but if there were named keys, it would also iterate over those. Because it doesn't care. We can, like I showed you, we could start at 10 and then make this 20 and this 30 and whatever the case may be. And that can sometimes be useful. Say you're got some table of offsets, you could actually make the keys the offsets, and then your value could be an address or something like that. I would honestly do it in a slightly different way. To me, that would be a little goofy, but there could be a scenario where something like that would be better. So yeah, I'm not trying to say he did a bad tutorial by any means. I know I want to say it took me years of just messing with I pairs and pairs before I really understood them well enough, and had stuff like this where I had to learn the hard way that, okay, I can't have blank spots in it, otherwise I pairs won't work, and that kind of thing. For the longest time, and I still sometimes go back to thinking that I pairs is only for index-based stuff, but it's really not. It's for lists or arrays where, like I've shown you, you start at 1, you get 2, and then each item, you're not going to have any nil blanks in there, and it can just go through the list. So that's really all that matters. And even here again, I do believe we can do it this way too. It's been a little while since I've done something like this. Yeah, no, it won't list numbers like that. I think it's because it tries to do something the way it deals with it in the index. Yeah, just to make sure it's not something I'm adding there. Yeah, no. So that is another thing to keep in mind. Whereas I do believe if we go back to pairs, oh no, I'm not actually sure what's going on there. Look at this table though. Yeah, that's actually kind of weird that it's hitting those and not wanting to print them. Interesting. Like I said, sometimes you just gotta play with things and see what it does. Oh, duh. I don't have that in my function here. I guess the easy solution would be to make that the main part, do else, print V, and then it would in fact iterate through that stuff. So that makes sense. That's funny. Forgot a comma. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's, again, even with mistakes, sometimes you just gotta play with things and see what it does. So yeah, so again, it's, iPairs is more about unbreaking lists, or lists that don't have any nil spots in them or any blanks in them. Because again, if we actually did make the first element nil, this won't print anything. Oh wow. Why does that work? That's actually weird. I wasn't expecting that at all. Huh. I'm guessing maybe it'll just kind of more or less eat it if it's the first element. No, I think it is just eating it, but it's... have to rewatch my own video, because now I'm wondering why does it skip it. Oh, we're doing pairs, that's why. That makes more sense. Okay. So yeah, there, if we use I pairs, if it hits that first element and it's nothing, it won't print anything. So that is, that's kind of the big thing with I pairs you do got to keep in mind is, it will start at 1 and just iterate through the list or array until it hits a blank spot, and then as soon as it hits nil, it stops. So there are a lot of, especially with if you're using name keys, that's why I pairs won't work, because it's just going to start at 1, you know what I mean? It's not going to try and find names or any of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave off here. Hopefully we'll have some more videos for you. I know I've done a threads one or a basic threads one. I may even do a more in-depth one later. And then I've got one for meta tables and meta methods. Again, just real basic to kind of introduce the concept. So not something you need to absorb 100%. It was just more because when we get into the user data video, to kind of show what's inside a user data object, we have to use get meta table. So I just kind of wanted to have at least some basics so we kind of get what we're doing with that function. But anyway, so we'll leave off here and move on to the next one. Anyway, hey, everybody have a good one. See you the next one.